With us, Kaduna State has for years been at the receiving end of attacks, and this continues to threaten the security of the state. This is despite the heavy presence of military and police formations in the state. It remains one of the most terrorized states in Nigeria. Just days ago, at least 12 persons were killed, 7 injured, and 17 houses razed by armed bandits who invaded Tutsi Gindi community in Kajuru local government area of the state. This development comes barely 1 week after 3 persons were also killed and 30 others kidnapped in Gwada community of Igabi local council. The governor of Kaduna State, Uba Sani, was a guest on TVC's platform program, Journalist Hangout, where he spoke on insecurity in the state.
Security is responsible to everyone. That is why whenever there's a problem of insecurity, people rush into blaming only the government. But my own understanding about security is a collective responsibility to everyone. If you are a businessman, you want your own business to be protected. Because when there is peace, you can be able to run your business. If you have partners outside Nigeria, you want them to come to your own business to collaborate with them or to partner with you, they can only come when you have security. When there's insecurity, you cannot even attract investors, whether as a government or as a private person. So, for me, it's a collective responsibility. So, creating security trust fund is bringing everyone to table, both the private sector, the traditional institutions, the security agencies, the government at the state level, as well as the community and religious leaders together, because it's everyone's responsibility.
Governor of Kaduna State, Uba Sani, speaking there with regards to he signing the Security Trust Fund bill into law, which he believes will address the matters of insecurity in the state. But joining us via Zoom to discuss further is the security consultant, Darlington Umoru. Good morning, Mr. Umoru. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure being here as usual.
Now, let's begin with the statement made by the governor of Kaduna State, Uba Sani, where he just signed into law the Security Trust Fund bill. And he believes that this will bring everybody to the table, every stakeholder, and also help address the matter of this reoccurring issue of attacks by bandits and all of these elements in the state. Do you see it as that?
Well, it depends on how they want to raise this money, and then whether these monies will actually go into what it will be meant for. It is one thing to talk about security trust fund. It's another thing to want to really deploy the funds that will come into that account into fighting insecurity. Lagos State is at the forefront of one of the states where you have the Security Trust Fund, and very well deployed. We've seen situations in Lagos where not a particular regime, it's an ongoing thing in Lagos State, where the Lagos State government actually procures some equipment to assist security agents to fight their own level of insecurity, talking about armed robbery, kidnapping, and some other vices in Lagos State. Kaduna State has been in the news for bad reasons over time, and sometimes I begin to wonder whether we need rocket science to bring to control the level of insecurity in Kaduna State. Under El-Rufai, Kaduna State suffered so much concerning banditry in that state. It got worsened to the extent that military facilities were attacked by hoodlums. And now it's been extended to the government of Uba Sani. And if Uba Sani thinks that having the security fund will help him fight the insecurity in the state, then so be it. But my fear is over time, the idea is not to have that funding. The idea is whether the monies that will go into that account will actually be properly deployed.
Well, the northern parts of the country is usually, predominantly farmland. Talk about Kaduna as well, which is not left out. This attack we're talking about is one in a series of, several attacks which has happened in the state. This particular one, it was alleged that the herders were involved, because they actually were looking for where to graze not only to graze, but to also have access to water for their cattle, which led to, issues, friction between them and farmers. What do you think can be done in this aspect, to address the issue of farmer herders crisis, especially in this part of the country and some other places that are happening? At a point we mulled the issue of cattle, the grazing routes, that's one. And also we also talked about ruga, farmlands, something like that, where we have to ranch our cattle.
Well, this problem has been there, particularly very much visible on the north central states. Kaduna is on the northwest, where in most times the problem has not really been the same. But Kaduna has a series of conflict problems. And most of these conflict issues, one, they had this issue of a tribal conflict, which had to do with the Fulanis and the Hausas, at a point in time. And then at another time, we had a series of problems, particularly as it has to do with kidnapping, banditry now. And now we're talking about the herder farmer issue. Federal government had, at the time, well, not this regime, also at the federal level, tried to provide solution, particularly on the north central at a point in time. But many kicked against it. Those were the times of where Ruga actually made headlines, across the country. But the basic problem, this problem of farmer herder thing is what is very much prominent, particularly in Plateau State, a part of the North Central, which has defied all conflict resolutions, over time. But I do not think that also needs rocket science to be resolved. West African countries recently, I saw measures put in place by some of these countries. Like, for instance, I was in Cote d'Ivoire, where the AFCON took place, and I traveled across some states, and along the line, I saw the methodology adopted by some of these countries. But again, the faces may not be the same. In Nigeria, we've had over time nomads move cattle from one point to the other. And it will also shock you to note that the West Africa free movement policy also allows herders from other countries to graze into your country. And so sometimes it becomes a very big challenge when government will even go ahead to tell you that some of these herders are not Nigerians. And when you get to that point, it becomes a very big challenge. The grazing routes, these persons will tell you over time were inherited and had been there, and the farmers have encroached on them, not allowing them to feed or go along with their cattle, which is their sources of livelihood. But I think both state governments, the Mayata Ali leaders, Mayata Allah, sorry, leaders can also sit with, can also sit with some representatives of these farmers and government to find a lasting solution. I think, by my own opinion, the herders in Nigeria have not really come to terms with the fact that the nomadic arrangement is no longer what is in tune now, considering what you find in other places where you have to use ranches and get some of these things done. I think they don't want to put in money. They don't want to invest so much in it. They just want to keep grazing, feeding them freely on those routes, and then invading farmers' crops, which is also affecting our food production. Again, you also understand that some of these farmers are having issues with the terrorists, where in most times some of them have to pay money to grow their crops, and sometimes they also pay money to harvest. And then they are having double calamity now in those places where they have the header problem in addition.
Let's look at the matter of state police that the governor also spoke about. He had been advocating for the implementation of state police to addressing this matter of insecurity in his state. And we saw recently the president calling a meeting of the governors as looking into also the introduction of state police. How far-reaching will the introduction of state policing address some of this crisis that we're witnessing?
Well, I think you want to drag me into talking to you on this subject concerning the pros and cons. It's good. But the question I want to ask is Nigeria's democracy right for state policing at the moment? Considering the fact that in this part of the world, politics is about almost a do or die affair. Politics is because a winner takes it all. Politicians don't take politics the way it should have come. And now, if you are placing a police arrangement in the hands of state governors, the control now under state governors, I wonder what the oppositions would suffer, at the end of the day, and whether this will not be also abuse. Abuse here now during electioneering processes, where some of these persons might be misused. In the country at the moment, I think in some regions we have what is similar to state police. In the Southwest, you have that already, even though it is not coming under that nomenclature. You have the Amotekun. Amotekun is a vivid example of what state policing is like, an arrangement that is particularly under the funding and control of state police. We're suffering from infiltration of so much firearms in the Nigerian society, where you have too many of it in the hands of non-state actors. Now, by the time you legalize all of that and review the constitution to accommodate that as well, then they become a part of the state actors. But my fear is that it has its advantages and disadvantages. But are the disadvantages not going to far outweigh the advantages? That's the question, $1 million question I would want anybody out there to answer. The process of us having state policing might not be as easy as we think. This could also drag in constitutional review that would now, accommodate them and accommodate some of the workabilities of these persons that will be armed. They will need trainings in here and out here. They will need to go for training, and Nigeria will gradually be falling into a police state.
Mr. Umoru, do you not feel that you're sort of over speculating the issue of state police? Looking at the disadvantages which you mentioned. You talked about the disadvantages, vis-a-vis the governors, using them to their own advantage against the oppositions, and then you went on to mention the Amotekun. And we had an election. We've had more than one elections. One of which is general election that we had recently in 2023, and we already had Amotekun in place. We don't have any issue or any history of them using them to hound they are the opposition party, don't you think? So the issue of state police vis-a-vis the fear of them being used for political gains has not been recorded. We don't have any history of it yet.
You are just talking about one region, and across that region, you don't even have them. You don't even have the presence of Amotekun in all the states. Do you feel the presence of Amotekun in Lagos State, for instance? Amotekun is almost a very vivid.
But Lagos State has a similitude of something close to state policing. We have the neighborhood watch, and we have some other few security parastatals which were not used for politics.
I mentioned Amotekun. You are telling me about a neighborhood watch in Lagos State, which do not bear arms. The neighborhood watch in Lagos State, Amotekun is an arrangement by the southwestern governors. The neighborhood watch in Lagos State is not an arrangement by the southwest governors. If as at the last time I checked, they have their advantages, like I truly said. But why I mentioned that was, I did say that we are already having a similarity of what the governors are calling state policing, and then even the county policing is not a bad arrangement, particularly when they had to work with the federal arrangement. It's not completely bad, but I said if we look at the pros and cons of this arrangement, would we not abuse them? Would some of these governors not abuse them at the end of the day? And I told you about the whole hall you could have to go through to achieving all of that. It's not just a thing of saying. You have to go through constitutional review to accommodate it. I'm not sure we're also looking at all of that. For instance, let me also use Côte d'Ivoire, where I just came from. Côte d'Ivoire, I traveled across Abidjan, most part of Abidjan. I also traveled across some other states, like Bouaké, where I saw police everywhere. But I hardly saw most of those police with firearms. The very first time I saw a policeman with firearms in Abidjan was when Nigeria played a final match. And that was only a shotgun. That was only a shotgun. We are already having issues with some few elements in the federal arrangement where some of these processes are abused. And then I'm not saying that the entire thing is wrong. My question is our democracy right to accommodate state policing at the moment? That is the challenge. But talking about fighting insecurity and providing information to the military and other security agents who might need them, yes. When you have them, like you have the neighborhood watch in Lagos State, they want to work and pass on information to the military and some of those who might need to process them. That is talking about gathering intel now, the human intel. Okay? Now, you would have that as an advantage if you have the police everywhere, but it may not even cover everywhere at the end of the day, up until you have that, the one you call the county police, or perhaps the local government police, that will be in every neighborhood, that will know where everybody will know who is coming into that neighborhood, and then strange faces and all of that. Again, these bandits, do they actually or gather in town to operate in town or plan their activities from the town? They do more of a guerrilla activity where they come from the forest and then into town to carry out the activity. Let us look at what happened in Kaduna recently. After that activity, that intel gone wrong, I called it, where the drone was deployed, the UAV was deployed, and some persons were killed accidentally, being mistaken for the bandits. Now, what went wrong by my own assessment was that the artificial intelligence did not work, was not juxtaposed on the human intelligence. So actually, before that firing was ordered. And so if you have some of these people, whether the county or the state policing, not actually working within the forest. They talked about deploying the forest guards into Sambisa forest, and I laughed. I was wondering how many of the forest guards they are going to have in each state at the federal level that will occupy the whole of Sambisa forest.
All right.
If you push the current strength of the Nigerian police into Sambisa forest, they will not be able to occupy Sambisa forest.
All right, quickly, because of our time, Mr. Umoru, let's look at what perhaps this current administration of the Kaduna State, for instance, can do differently to addressing this matter of insecurity in the state.
Well, they have started well. They are thinking of emulating what is actually happening in Lagos State, having a security trust fund. And then my challenge is whether they'll be able to deploy the security trust fund. These funds will go into that account, into assisting security agencies and the military by assisting in providing equipment, vehicles, fueling, maintenance, and all of that. But again, one thing the governors have not been able to do, or the federal government has not been able to do in this country, is the fact that for every month, governors get a package called security votes. These security votes, what are they used for? Sincerely, who audits these security votes by these governors? That is a question, $1 million question. Nobody has been able to answer. The essence of security votes is to assist the security agencies in your state, or assist security in fighting insecurity in your state. But what are these monies being deployed to, and who audits them? Have you ever heard that EFCC or ICPC have taken any governor to court for misusing their security votes? Has any governor been called upon over time to come give account of what or how the security votes they collect 12 times in a year were deployed? But let's hope that part of what will go into the security trust fund that Obasani is trying to initiate now in his state will go into that account as well. So there's so much to be done. There's so much to be done. The states need to assist security agencies and the military in their own domain in fighting insecurity. It should not be left to the federal government alone. Security is the business of everybody. I kept saying repeatedly, I'm sounding like a broken record here again this morning. Security is the business of everybody. The media is doing theirs, just like you're doing right now. The individuals there should say what they see or speak up when they see strange movements. But all of this put together will help security agencies put up, gather intel. Now, the intel gathering is mainly left, well, not completely left in the hands of the DSS. But we know that every security arm has their department of intel gathering. But in most times, you have all of this with the DSS, who needs to provide intel, and then they meet in the clearinghouse, and then they share all of this knowledge, and then where they have to, now carry out any of this action. That's but right. Over time in Kaduna, I think one of the basic challenges we've had is that intel has not really been gotten right. Particularly the artificial intel with the use of the UAVs and then the human intel have not really corroborated very well.
Right. Very quickly, Mr. Umoru, very quickly. Yeah, very quickly. Do you not feel that it's time we need to begin issuing death penalty for those who are found wanting, those who are found guilty of causing crime, especially banditry, kidnapping, etc., and how much we are, prosecuting these people, these offenders?
My brother, you see, when we speak sometimes, yes, it's not about issuing death penalties. Go to prisons, what you call correctional centers across the country at the moment. You find a lot of persons who have been condemned to death. No governor is ready, I repeat here, no governor is ready to sign the execution of all those persons. I challenge you to go through correctional centers across the country, even in Lagos here. and go count the number, do head count of the number of persons who have been condemned to death by courts, the judiciary, and then governors who are required to sign that document before they are executed are refusing to sign them. It has become a political matter. It is not an issue of sentencing people to death for offenses as provided by the Nigerian Constitution, even though across the world, the UN organizations such as the UN and others have said that should be phased out. But in Nigeria, at the moment where it's not phased out, you find so many people in the prisons are waiting to be executed. You cannot go after the judiciary must have done their job. You also need the number one citizens of each of the states to sign those documents before those people can be executed. Is it enough? Is it enough to sentence people to death when at the end of the day they congest our correctional centers and then they turn out to be something else at the end of the day? I do not think that is where the problem lies.
All right.
The governors themselves have a lot to do.
Umoru, we have to leave this conversation here now. Our time is up. We must thank you, security consultant Darlington Umoru.